So River State politics is in the works, and it's quite interesting what's going on right there. Rotimi Amaechi has been reacting to the development in River State. He's the latest out of the so many persons who have reacted. So let's begin with him. As a declaration of state of emergency and suspension of Governor Siminalayi Fubara by President Bola Tinubu continues to ruffle feathers and welcomed by so many other persons, and some persons also reacted to the development. Former Governor of Rivers State, Mr. Rotimi Chibuike Amaechi, has said the developments is technically suspending and truncating democracy in the state. Though the state seemed to be calm following the state of emergency declarations, we are also observing that the military has been patrolling around the streets of Port Harcourt, the state capital. It was also observed that the governor and his team have long moved out from the government house, but his whereabouts are yet to be ascertained at this moment. In the statements he made available to journalists in Port Harcourt today, Amaechi, who is the immediate past Minister of Transportation, noted that a democratically elected state governor cannot be removed from office by a proclamation of the president. He stated that the suspension is a dangerous affront on Nigeria's constitution and democracy. According to the former Rivers State governor, unequivocally, he says, quote, "I condemn the rather brazen and unilaterally reckless suspension and removal of Governor of Rivers State, the Deputy President, the Deputy Governor of Rivers State, and the members of the Rivers State House of Assembly by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu. With his singular move, Mr. President has technically suspended and truncated democracy in Rivers State. This clearly violates the Constitution and same Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Mr. President swore to uphold. Sections 198, the statement continues, 188 of the Nigerian Constitution clearly stipulates how a state governor can be removed from office. And it does not include a fiat declaration, decree, or promulgation by Mr. President. Therefore, he cannot approach such powers himself. A democratically elected state governor cannot be removed from office by a proclamation of Mr. President. The suspension of two key democratically elected arms of government in Rivers State by Mr. President evidently violates the Constitution, even within the scope and interpretation of sections 305 that the President cited in his broadcast. He stressed that the unlawful suspension of the elected democratic institutions in my dear Rivers State points to a brazen attempt at power grab in the state by forces and persons who do not have such constitutional powers. The unfolding events in Rivers State in the past months points to a clear, orchestrated plot by some persons to unconstitutionally perpetuate and impose themselves on the people. At this time, and the moment in our nation's democracy, all people of the goodwill and conscience should rise to oppose this audacious violation of our Constitution and rape of our democracy. Mr. President must be made to know and understand in unmistakable terms that this illegality cannot stand. So he's also calling everyone to speak on this matter. He commended all the governors who have spoken on this matter. He also commended other House of Rep members and even senators who have spoken on the matter, and actually direct the senators or the National Assembly to make sure that they not just reject this particular proposal or proclamation, but go as far as cautioning the president regarding the matter. Peter Obi has also reacted to this development, and it's quite interesting what he has said. The Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 elections has criticized President Tinubu's declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, describing it as unconstitutional and reckless. Obi accused Tinubu of disregarding rule of law and showing a dangerous willingness to trample on democracy. The declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State is just reckless. It is a clear attempt to return us a state of nature and tighten its grip on power at all costs. It has plunged us back into a state of lawlessness, hugely undoing the progress we have made in the last 26 years of democratic journey. It is this degrading a backdoor imposition of martial law on a strategic part of the federation with all the implied negatives, Obi said in a statement on Wednesday via X. Obi asserted that the political situation in Rivers does not justify the emergency rule and the suspension of Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, and state lawmakers, adding that the action is also a biased interpretation of sections 3051 of the 1999 Constitution. He said, quote, "A state of emergency does not mean an elected governor can be removed unilaterally. His decision does not align with democratic norms or good governance. Instead, it appears to be a predetermined action serving specific interests rather than the collective good of people of Rivers State and Nigeria." Other reactions, of course, we've seen CUPP react to this latest development. That is the Coalition of United Political Parties. The Coalition of United Political Parties described the declaration of state of emergency of Rivers State as a dangerous precedent for Nigerian democracy. The CUPP National Secretary Peter Ame, in a statement on Tuesday in Abuja, also described it as a selective application of the state of emergency, application of the state of emergency decree. Ame said that by suspending Governor Siminalayi Fubara and appointing a sole administrator, President Bola Tinubu had flagrantly disregarded the Constitution and determined and undermined the principles of democracy. The PDP is also screaming from all sides of its mouth, but the APC is welcoming this development. Of course, you can't beat that. Rivers State's Ajibola Bashiru, National Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, applauded President Bola Tinubu's declaration of the state of emergency in Rivers. Reacting to the development, the APC expressed hope that the emergency would help restore peace and order in the troubled oil state. Jude Idimogo, a former two-term Lagos State House of Assembly member, has commended President Bola Tinubu for declaring a state of emergency in Rivers. Idimogo, who represented Oshodi Isolawan from 2015 to 2023, said in an interview with the News Agency of Nigeria in Lagos on Tuesday that the declaration would address the political crisis in this state. He said that the political tension in the state caused by the feud between Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his predecessor, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, needed quick intervention. So there's a mixed reaction with this development. The NBA, the Nigerian Bar Association, have condemned it in total terms, that what the president did was wrong, was not constitutional. And then one would really wonder whether the president listened to his attorney general. It looks like something that he thought of and went to broadcast without even speaking to a few persons about this development. I also saw that earlier that in the House of Reps today there were rowdy sessions about this particular matter, because again, the National Assembly have to ratify it. The National Assembly have to approve, what is going on in Rivers State. I mean, what this means is that if you have a problem, even if you are voted by your people, if you have a problem, you can be suspended. Anybody can be suspended. I mean, I've heard that happen in the National Assembly once or twice. People who came from their states, they get suspended. They don't get sacked, because you can't really sack somebody who is representing a people. But I've really never heard of a democracy, in Nigerian democracy, where a president suspended a governor when there are no chaotic situation. Because again, we've had that situation happen under Goodluck Jonathan, and the state of emergency was declared. The governor still held their seat because it was impossible to tell a governor to step down. I mean, the constitution doesn't allow that to happen, because tomorrow, if you are fighting with somebody, if you are fighting with the president, if you criticize the president can come out and say you are suspended as governor, which is unbelievably, uncalled for. It's not, constitutional. So there's a whole lot playing out at the same time, and I just hope that things straighten out a little bit. I had the conversation with a legal practitioner who broke these things down, for us regarding the 305 that the president actually spoke about, and of course, what exactly is going on in Rivers State as it stands. So watch this. And following up with the latest development in Rivers State, I mean, it's less than 24 hours since the declaration of a state of emergency by the President of Nigeria on Rivers State. As it stands right now, as a sole administrator and already taking over the government of Rivers State following that particular declaration. We have a legal practitioner who would give us an insight into that development. His name is Samuel Ayasuk. He is in Rivers State. Good to have you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for being.
All right. There are so many reactions about this latest development. What's your first reading of what's going on in Rivers State?
Concerning the declaration of state of emergency by the president, I'm first surprised because I think it's unconstitutional. It's not necessary. I mean, constitutionally it's not necessary, and the act is unconstitutional. The Constitution provides for conditions under which the president may declare a state of emergency. Those conditions do not exist or did not even exist in Rivers State when the state of emergency was proclaimed. And we feel that it is both unconstitutional and a coup on the state, especially in one aspect. The Constitution does not provide that in the event that a state of emergency is proclaimed, the democratic institutions of state should be suspended. No. We have an example under President Jonathan in 2013, when President Jonathan declared the state of emergency in 3 northern states. Governors of those states were still in office, as governors. Only the security aspect of containing the security or insecurity for the state we are activated. In this sense, first of all, there are no clear and immediate or imminent danger. They do not meet the conditions required under the Constitution to proclaim a state of emergency. And besides, the president doesn't also have the power to suspend or remove the democratically elected government or the State House of Assembly from operating and then imposing a military on the state. It's tantamount to coup, so to say.
Actually, use sections 305 as his reasons. It says there were some pending issues, especially as regards yesterday's bombing of pipeline. That's an economic sabotage. Don't you think that was enough for him to suspend the governance of Rivers State?
I don't think that was enough. In the first place, whether that had been verified. There are many critical facilities here in the state. We have had a whole lot of oil spillage and explosions before now. So it's like looking for a peg on which to hang an excuse. In as much as we know that there is this political tension in the state, which the president himself is aware, it could be politically settled, but the pipeline is an excuse. No, nobody owned up to that. It may be an accident. These pipelines have been there for over 50 years, and even our laws provide that those pipelines after 50 years should be replaced. So because of this, there may be some explosion, accidental. So he using it as an excuse to remove the democratically elected institutions of state and impose a military head to us, and it's unconstitutional. Even section 305 that the president used spelled out the conditions, the circumstances in which the president should do. And when in declaring a state of emergency, it also did not grant the president the power to remove the democratically elected office holders from their offices. We have an example under President Jonathan, as I said, in 2013. The governors of the affected states were still in office while the state of emergency was subsisting.
Right. In this case, it's actually a little bit different from what we had in 2013 under Goodluck Jonathan. I mean, we had a certain group of persons who had threatened to start bombing the pipeline if Siminalayi Fubara is impeached. As soon as that notice was given to Fubara for impeachment, that was when the bombing started. I mean, in that, 2013, there was, nothing of that nature going on. There was practically no threat. It was just like an insecurity situation that we're having with Boko Haram bombings and all of those, And then we all understand that the governor still held their seat. But this one, there was an obvious threat. The non-state actors threatened the country, and they also went on to continue to start off bombing, the pipeline, which is an economic sabotage. So one would wonder that one would think that the president is justified by what he has done to keep the peace in Rivers State.
If you consider the differences in those scenarios, as you say, there are persons that are threatened, and I believe such individuals wouldn't be greater than the state. They could be traced, they could be arrested. A lot of persons are threatening this country, we know. Some of them are in custody. Those are even insurrections, those are threatening to break away. They are in custody now. So if a particular individual or group threatening to do some act that is criminal, it don't impose a state of emergency on the state. It's a subterfuge, in my opinion, that such a thing could be. Anyway, there may be threat, but arguing that one particular incident was carrying out the threat is still rash, so to say, to conclude, because there may be threat, but eventually what happened was not connected with the threats. That is another issue. So if the president says this is because of this explosion and the threat, and the persons that made this threat are known, this explosion has not been confirmed to be done by them because they have not owned up to it. There was no long time between when that explosion happened on Monday and when the declaration of the state of emergency. One may wonder whether it is not premeditated. Besides, the political crisis in the state is known to the president long ago. The president could wade in at any time. He could have waded in before. He could still wade in now and resolve them rather than imposing a state of emergency on the state, which will now infringe on the rights of the state's citizens, especially the electorate, to have their democratically elected leaders in office. And we know what is associated with state of emergency. Fundamental rights will be violated, and they will come under the presumption that fundamental rights are derogated under Section 45, subsection 3 of the Constitution, that says the fundamental rights could be derogated upon in a period of emergency. So the people, the civic populace now will be subjected to military hard-handedness. And then we are under a constitutional democracy. But then let me underline this one. Even if the president, having the power to proclaim a state of emergency, did it, there is nowhere in the Constitution that the president is entitled or empowered to remove the democratically elected leaders of that state from office by any word used, whether suspension or what. The entire gamut of sections 88 to sections 105 of the Constitution provide for how the manner and condition in which elected officers of this nation shall be removed from office. Declaring a state of emergency is not one of them. So even if the president in some quarters may be justified for proclaiming, I do not hope that it is not, but it's also subject to ratification at what? National Assembly. And whoever is aggrieved may also approach the court for redress. But in my opinion, the action of the president at this stage is both unconstitutional and unnecessary.
now, afterwards, say after 6 months, do you think that he's going to reinstate the government? And like you've mentioned, you've highlighted the fact that there might be some high-handedness by the military. I mean, the military cannot be the same as the civilian. After all, they were not voted in. The man there now is not voted in, so he could decide to do and undo. But then again, you would think that looking ahead, what happens afterwards? If the 6 months, finally elapses, do you see the president reinstating the government of Rivers State? Do you see that playing out? Do you think that the government of Tinubu has an interest, especially seeing that 2027 is around the corner?
That is 2027, the political aspect, I am not too concerned about. My problem is the legal aspect of it. And something that I hold as unconstitutional, I do not even expect it to delay till six months. Because it is this, the Constitution requires under that section 305 as the President relies on, that the President shall immediately transmit the gazetted copies of that proclamation to the National Assembly to act on within 2 days. So it is subject to their approval that such proclamation may be upheld. But I also think that if they uphold it, if they upheld it, the aggrieved persons are entitled to approach the court, because we need to set our laws straight. This situation arose under Jonathan. Jonathan didn't touch the governors of those states, though that state of emergency was a constitutional thing. We are under a constitutional democracy. It is left for the people to decide their leaders. If there is issue of insecurity, because the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and he wishes to suppress that insecurity, he could deploy the military or the police to target only those persons and leave the administrative part of it to the democratically elected leaders of the state. That is my own opinion. I don't expect it to last till 6 months. Though, however, I add that the powers of the National Assembly in ratifying is embedded in the National Assembly. After the 6 months, it is still subject to piecemeal ratification extension in time to the powers of the National Assembly. So politically, I may see them doing it for the purpose of gaining ground towards 2027, which is a very sad thing for our democracy.
We've beginning to see the sharp, display of chaos when the matter was presented in the House of Reps this morning. A whole lot of things are happening there. Hopefully, we're going to bring you up to speed when anything develops. So many thanks for your time, Mr. Samuel Ayasuk, is legal practitioner all the way from Rivers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, just to also mention that this was a rowdy session this morning as the House of Reps in Abuja onto the issues regarding the suspension of the government of Rivers State.